All right, welcome everyone. It's Laura. Ruth is here demonstrating for me today, and we're going to do a practice that is around the hip flexors, meaning we will be working on releasing tension in the hip flexors. We'll be working on engaging the hip flexors in a coordinated way with the abdominal muscles in a way that makes sense for your rowing stroke, and also in real life, not just on the boat. And we will also be doing a little bit of self-massage. So the tools that we need today are a small ball, like a tennis ball, or a toy ball sometimes works. A lacrosse ball is a little bit firmer, but that's a good size. So if you have one, grab one of those and we'll use it towards the end of the practice. We will also need a strap. If you have yoga blocks, grab those. If not, we can get by without it. If you don't have the yoga blocks, you definitely need a foam roller or a blanket or a towel that can be folded up or rolled up into something to support underneath your hips for supported bridge. So we are going to start with, I'm going to get out of the way so you can see Ruth. We're going to start with finding some of your hip flexors. So I'm going to have you lie flat, like on your back, face up, legs out straight. And then if you need to watch what Ruth is doing here first, please do that. You might need to pick your head up to look, or I'll try to be good with my cues. So we're going to find some of the hip flexors here on your body. So find where your front hip bones are. They're actually not part of your hip joint, but they're your pelvic bones, but they're here on either side. Find those bones and then go just below them. So you're going to go just inferior, closer to the feet, but just like a finger or two width below, and then press into that area. There are two hip flexors that come up and attach to the underside of that front hip bone. So pressing in there and see how it feels. If it's tender, if you just feel the tension in the muscles there. Some people, when they're really tight, it feels like this, like rebar. It's that kind of tight. All right, so there's two of the hip flexors there. Find those front hip bones again, and then go up just like a finger width and in a finger width. So closer to the belly button, but not very far in. And then press here, and you might need to press a little bit deeper and see how that feels there. If there's some tension, does it feel tight? Is it a little bit sore or painful? There are two hip flexors in there that we might be palpating. All right, now we're going to put our legs in a position where the hip flexors are slackened and we take the tension off of those hip flexors. So that we're doing a before and after palpation. So now you're going to come into legs up on a chair, legs up on the couch. Ruth is going to use the two yoga bolsters here. That's to mimic what a couch or an ottoman would be. And we'll be here for a couple of minutes. It's okay to come off of your yoga mat to be here because we're just going to be in some stillness in this position. So you want your hips and knees bent here, somewhere between 60 and 90 degrees. It does not have to be exact. And let yourself get comfortable here. If you need to make any adjustments, lifting the hips, lowering back down. Take a few breaths, maybe even take an inhale through the nose. Open the mouth, let out a sigh. Do that again. And then just taking a normal breath here. Before we start to get into the breathing a little bit more, I want you to palpate. I want you to press on those same places again. So find those front hip bones, these kind of bony points here. Go just below them and press into that same area. My hope is that it feels a little softer, or if it was sore or painful, it feels a little less sore, a little less painful. And then we'll find those deeper ones. So find those front hip bones again, and then come up just a little bit and inward, just a little bit, like one finger width or two finger widths inward, closer to the belly button. Pressing there. See if that feels a little softer. Does it feel a little less tender, a little less sore? It might not right away. So relaxing your hands, you don't have to feel or palpate anymore. We're going to be here for a couple of minutes. And the idea here is that we have brought the thigh bone in attachment of these hip flexors closer to the pelvic bone or the spine attachment of the top part of those muscles. And so instead of the muscles being pulled into a taut position or a stretched position like they are when you're lying flat, the muscles are slackened. When muscles are slackened passively, meaning you're not using the muscles to shorten them, those muscles can relax. In fact, it's a position that's challenging to engage the muscles from. Start to slow down your breath, lengthen out your breath. Breathing through the nose helps to slow the breathing down and sort of regulate the rhythm of the breathing here. For rowers, the hip flexors can be tight and they can also be short. And those are kind of two different things here. Tight meaning holding tension. Short meaning the muscles are shortened and don't allow you to stretch and lengthen them. And that's because in the phase of the rowing stroke, you never come all the way into a full hip extension or that straightened out position as you are when you're lying flat or when you're standing up. So we will do some things later where we are lengthening, stretching those hip flexor muscles. We'll do a little bit more, a few more things where we're relaxing them. Another reason they can be tense or shortened is that you're actually having to use them quite a bit as you come into the finish of the stroke and as you start to move back towards the catch. This is a good recovery position after a workout, after a long time in the boat or on the erg. Also just feels really good for usually, unless you have some sacroiliac joint issues, and then sometimes this is not as comfortable. Take the next few breaths, setting an intention for your practice. And you can set whatever intention you've come to practice with here in the front of your mind. But I will offer that you are trying to be a little bit more in tune to what your body is telling you and what you're feeling. So instead of just saying, oh, she told me to put my foot forward and my tailbone down, and here I am, you place your foot forward, you lengthen your tailbone down, and you notice what you feel in your body. Does it feel like stretch? Does it feel like release? Does it feel like work? Does it feel good? Does it feel bad? Is it neither? Take the next few breaths to set an intention here, this one that you've come to the class with, or this one about being thoughtful and present. Take the next few breaths, setting this intention for your practice. And as you're ready, we'll bring our legs here off the chair, the couch, the ottoman, or whatever props you have, you can just push them out of the way with your feet or move them out of the way. And we are going to be on our backs again. So if you scooted off your yoga mat, find your way onto it. And I'll have you pull one knee in towards you, holding on to the shin or the back of the leg, and stretch the other leg out straight. That bent knee you have pulled in, you're not pulling it in super tight. And in fact, bring it off to the side a little bit. So bring that knee out a little wider than the hip. And we're going to start to lengthen the straightened leg. So as you inhale, push the heel of the straightened leg out away from you. And then exhale, relax it. We're going to do that a few more times. Inhale, push out through your heel, lengthening through that straightened leg. And exhale, relax. Let's do that one more time. Here, we're just starting to lengthen out through hip flexors. And releasing this here. And we'll switch to the other side. So that bent knee, you've pulled it out just a little wider than your hip. And as you inhale, reach out through the heel of the straightened leg as if you could make that leg longer. Exhale, relax it. Do that a few more times. So you might feel that pull in the front of the hip or thigh. You might feel it into the abdomen a little bit, those deep hip flexors. Good. And then relaxing here. Bring both feet down to the floor, so knees bent and feet flat. Walk your feet out a little wider than your hips. Bring the arms out to the sides, the palms facing up. And start to rock your knees gently side to side. Because we are in that wider foot position, your knees won't be symmetrical. Meaning when the knees go to the side, so when the knees go to the left, the right kneecap points towards the foot of the mat, while the left kneecap points towards the left. So you don't need to really change anything, just knowing you're not trying to line your knees up with each other. And this might feel like a nice rotation through the spine, starting to open up the hip flexors a little bit more here, lengthening them. If you want a little bit more stretch, the next time your knees go to the left, press into your right foot, pushing the right butt cheek off the ground, and then come back to center. Knees go to the right, press into the left foot, left butt cheek up off the ground. So you open through those left hip flexors there, and then just go back and forth. And how did that feel? What are you feeling there? Do you feel that lengthening and opening through the hip flexors? Does it feel like pinchy in the lower back? Does it feel like your hamstring's gonna cramp? Does it feel like you're creating space and openness, or something else entirely? One of my favorite ways to start a practice. Because a lot of us have hip flexor tension. You don't have to be rowing to have hip flexor tension. All right, we'll bring those knees up and through center here. And then walk the feet back in more hip distance, sitting bone distance apart, and stretch one leg out long again. And let the heel rest down on the ground. In a moment, we're going to do a little heel slide, meaning we're sliding that straightened leg in towards you, but we're going to use the abdominal muscles here. So come into that leg lengthener again. So push out through the heel, feel your lower back pull away from the floor a little bit, and then you're pressing the lower back into the floor and slide the heel up towards your butt. Or you can float it on the ground if it's that kind of sticky mat. So we inhale, reach out through that same leg, lengthen out through the heel, feel the low back pull away from the floor. And then as you exhale, press the lower back into the floor and pull the knee in towards you. Do a couple more of these. So we're doing a little bit of a forward backward pelvic tilt, and we're using the hip flexors to pull the leg in towards you and the abdominal muscles, the rectus abdominis, your six pack, to flatten the lower back at the same time. One more here. Good. All right, relaxing there with the knees bent. Rock your knees just gently side to side, a little relax. And we'll do this on the other side. So straightening that leg out. The other knee stays bent, foot flat. Reach out, lengthen out through the heel. And then as you exhale, flatten the low back as you slide the heel or pull the heel up towards you. Inhale, stretch the leg out, lengthen out through it as we did before. Low back pulls away from the floor a bit. Exhale, flatten the lower back, pull the knee in. Do a couple more here. So I know we've been talking about releasing tension and stretching through the hip flexors. Now we're starting to engage them because we don't want them just floppy. We want them to have tone and strength, and they need to coordinate with our abdominal muscles for lots of things, but definitely as you're moving into the finish and out of the finish. All right, feet flat here. Rock your knees gently side to side. And then making your way to hands and knees. And you might want the blanket underneath your knees just for some extra padding, just to be comfortable, because there's no reason to be uncomfortable. There's no benefit to being uncomfortable here. And I'd like you to find child's or puppy pose. So child's pose is the hips over heels position, forehead resting down on the ground or on stacked hands. Puppy pose is an alternative where it's hips over knees, forehead resting down on the ground or stacked hands. And that puppy pose that Ruth is demonstrating here is, for our purposes, is mostly to keep the compression out of the spine if you have a herniated disc, low bone density in the spine, hip or knee issues, or you're just more comfortable here. And note the hip position here. This is also a hip flexor relaxation position. So we did the one at the beginning with the legs up on the chair or the couch. Child's or puppy pose also puts that slackened position in your hip flexors. Sometimes that's why these poses feel so good. So we're going to do a sequence of moves where we start and finish in that child's or puppy pose. So stretch your arms forward from here. And on your inhale, you'll lift the head and torso, shifting forward into a knee down plank. Keep the core intention of plank and exhale, lower all the way down to the ground, elbows by your ribs. Yeah, and your props are probably in the way. A low cobra. So we pull the shoulder blades towards the spine and the back waist to peel the head and chest up off the floor. And then push with your arms, pull the low belly in to push your hips back to find that child's or puppy pose. Good. We'll do that again. Inhale, lift up and shift forward, knee down plank. Exhale, lower to the ground, elbows by ribs. Shoulder blade strength peels the head and chest up off the floor. Exhale, push up, low belly pulls in, hips back, child's or puppy pose. One more of those, and you could keep it at the low cobra or press into a higher back bend. So finding yourself belly down and pressing up to what a comfortable position feels. And exhale, hips back, head down, child's or puppy pose. Taking a break here. Remembering that you can rest at any time during the practice. Could be this pose or sitting or lying down. You can modify, you can adapt, you can substitute anything that I'm doing during the practice, keeping in mind nothing should be painful or uncomfortable. Coming up to hands and knees here into a tabletop position. And you could stay with the palms flat. You could be on loose fist or your forearms down. So you have some options here if you don't like that flat hand or your wrists don't like that position. We're going to stretch one leg back and across to the opposite side. Yep. And then you could look around your shoulder towards that foot or maybe just to the top corner of the mat if that doesn't feel good to your neck. And then we'll bring the knee back down underneath its own hip. And we do the other side. Stretch that leg across. Maybe you look around the shoulder or towards the top corner of the mat. And then bring the knee back down underneath its own hip. And we'll go side to side here. Inhaling, leg across, opening through that side body. Exhale, knee down. And although we are focusing on the hip flexors, there are many other parts of your body that need attention. So this won't all be hip flexor stuff. We need to warm up the spine in all three planes of motion. So getting that side bending in here. One more. We'll bring that knee back down. So we're getting ready for a little hip and core strength from this tabletop position. And if you need to take a break off your hands, remember you could be on your forearms on yoga blocks here. Yeah, or do a little shake or a little release. So find your tabletop, whatever variation you're doing here. Find a neutral spine position so the back isn't arched down towards the floor nor rounded up towards the ceiling. And then firm your belly, make a solid wall of your abs and find this length in your spine. We're bringing one leg up and back and then bend the knee about 90 degrees so the sole of the foot faces the ceiling. We're doing tiny little lifts of this leg. So we inhale, lift the sole of the foot towards the ceiling and then lower to the starting position. So it's just a 1 or 2 inch lift. Inhale, a lift, exhale, lower. Couple more. Do not let the low back arch come into an extension position. You want the movement to come from the hip, and hopefully you're feeling your buttocks, your glute, the back of the thigh, your hamstrings working. Right, lower that knee down, take a little break, maybe a few cat-cows, a child's pose, sit back on your heels, stand up on your knees, shake it out. Whatever reset or release or relax you'd like to do before we go to the other side. So find your tabletop, whether it's hands, forearms, find that neutral spine, firm the belly, tailbone and top of head reach away from each other, bringing the other leg up. Bend that knee to about 90 degrees, sole of the foot faces the ceiling. Tiny little donkey kick here. We inhale, lift the sole of the foot, an inch or two. Exhale, lower it to the starting position. Keeping that core engaged and not having movement in the spine. It's all from the hip. And it might be even like a 1/4 of an inch for you if your hip flexors are tight. Good. Lowering that knee down. Find a rest, child's or puppy, or sit back on your heels, or cat-cow it, whatever would feel like a nice break or release from that tabletop work. And then coming back here to hands and knees, tuck your toes under here and just pause for a moment. If you have tightness in the big toes, soles of the feet, your knees don't bend well, you're going to do smaller movements. But we're shifting our hips back towards the heels and then shifting it forward here again to that tabletop pose. We'll do that a few times. So you exhale to shift back. Inhale, shifting forward. Warming up soles of feet, calves, knees, hips back here with this. This might be keeping the knees grounded, might be best for you to stay with this, or you could come into a brief down dog. So next time you shift your hips back, lift the knees, hips up, heels release down. And then we lower the knees again, shift forward to that tabletop. Shift back, lift the knees, downward facing dog. Lower the knees, shift forward. Do one or two more of those. Or don't. Stay knees grounded. Next time you're in that down dog, let's pause here. Make any adjustments you need to. It might be walking the feet forward or back, wider, narrower. You might need a little bend in those knees so you can reach the sitting bones up and back. And yeah, start to pedal the feet or lift and lower heels or lift the leg or shift it to plank and back to down dog. Shake that head out. You've got lots of options here. So a good time to think, what does my body need here? Does it need a little more pedaling? Do I need to lower my knees and rest? Settle in your down dog here. Looking forward, we're going to step the right foot between the hands, help it to the front if it doesn't get there. We're lowering the back knee. Okay. Bring both hands up on the front thigh and lift yourself into this upright lunge. You want the ankle or the roughly underneath that front knee here. And we're looking for a hip flexor stretch. And if we remember where we palpated those deep hip flexors that were in the belly, those hip flexor muscles go to the spine. So if you flatten the low back, if you tuck the tailbone under and pull the belly button towards the spine, do you start to feel some stretch on the front of the hip and thigh of that left side? If you do, stay here. If you don't, keep the tailbone tucked under and bend the knee just a little bit more. It doesn't take much, sometimes just a half an inch forward to get that stretch. Keep that right hand on the hip and reach your left arm up. Just find length. Breathe. This one of those deep hip flexors that attaches to the spine, it's called your psoas. It is interdigitated, meaning it's like when you interlace your fingers with your diaphragm. Yeah, you can. So Ruth's going to show you here from the front. Take another couple of breaths in. So if you're holding your breath, you're kind of losing out on some of that stretch of that deep hip flexor. Yeah. All right. We'll lower that hand down and step it back into a down dog. Take a few more breaths, a pedaling of the feet, a lift of the heels, a shake of the head. And then looking forward, it'll be the left foot between the hands. Take your time getting it there because you know there's no rush. We're lowering the back knee and lift your torso up. Sometimes hands on that front thigh helps you get there, hands on the chair or the wall. And we are finding that pelvic tilt, the tucking the tailbone under, the flattening of the lower back to see if you can feel some stretch, some length, some opening on the front of that right hip and thigh. And reach that right arm up. This is going to help pull the rib cage up a little bit, which is attached to your spine, which starts to lengthen now from both ends of the hip flexor muscles, the thigh bone end, the pelvic bone end for some of them, the spinal end for some of them. Take another breath. And on your exhale, lower both hands down around that front foot. Step your back foot to the front foot, maybe one big step or several little ones, finding a forward fold. So you have a few options, the ragdoll version where you have at least a little bend in your knees so you protect your hamstrings, or the protective of the spine position, it's feet wide, butt back, forearms on your thighs. The spine stays long instead of rounded over. Either is fine. Just be mindful of what's going on with your body. This one that Ruth's demonstrating here is also good if your hamstrings are really tight. Maybe you sway a little bit, subtle weight shift. Again, these forward folds, either version of them, are releasing tension in your hip flexors. It's stretching through the back of the body, hamstrings, calves, back, but releasing tension in the hip flexors. Bring your weight shift back to center, bend the knees a little bit more, and then look forward. Inhale, rise up to standing. You could reach your arms up here, palms come together. Exhale, hands to prayer. And lower the arms down, roll out your shoulders, shake it out a little bit. And I'm going to have you come to stand. You can stand facing the screen, Ruth. Yeah, move the blanket out of the way. I'm going to have you stand with your feet a little wider than hip distance apart, warming up just a little bit more. We've kind of taken it slowly and slowly made our way to standing. We're coming into paintbrush hands. So you're going to have your arms straight out forward and your wrist relaxed. On your inhale, reach the backs of the wrists towards the ceiling and then flip your palms forward and sit back into a squat. Keep your chest lifted. And then palms down. Inhale, rise up, straightening the legs, backs of the wrist up, palms forward. Exhale, sit back. Good. Take a few more up and down here. So it's basically sitting down into a squat and coming back up. And we're just getting like a flowy movement here with the arms. Paintbrush hands, because your hands are maybe obviously like paintbrushes, but like painting a fence post kind of thing. All right. Next time you rise up, stay up, but you can let your arms come down and just let them swing out here in front. So coming up to the front of your mat, and we're coming into a crescent lunge position. So take a big to medium step back with your right foot. So crescent lunge, you're going to either keep the back heel up like Ruth has it here, or step forward to have a shorter stance, the back heel down. But you want both hips square to the front. Front knee bending. Now, if your right hip flexors are tight, it pulls you into a forward pelvic tilt and a big arch in the lower back. So lengthen the tailbone straight down towards the earth, not a tuck under like we did in the knee down lunge. And you might need to bend that back knee a little bit to get the tailbone to anchor towards the earth. See if you feel that length and openness in the right hip flexors here. Left hand on the hip, reach your right arm up. Reach through that whole right side. Does that change any sensation of stretch for you in the hip flexors or the side waist, or does it just give you tension in your neck? Take another breath. And then bring that hand down to the hip. And keep that tailbone lengthening towards the earth for now. Remember how this hip flexor stretch feels on that right side. And then start to hinge forward from your hips. You'll probably be able to straighten that back knee. Pause when the torso comes in line with the back leg. So here we are in arrow pose. We're no longer stretching the hip flexors. Reach your hands towards the back foot. And then we're making circular sweeping motion. So we inhale, sweep the arms out to the sides and forward. So you end up in a sort of Superman or holding a ball in front of you position. And then exhale, sweep the arms out and back behind you. Inhale, sweep the arms out and forward. Exhale, sweep them out and back. Firming the belly here. Take a little break if you need to on that front knee. Straightening. Next time your arms come forward, lift the torso, reach the torso and arms up, and then exhale, step your back foot to the front foot. Shake out the legs, roll the shoulders. That front leg was working really hard. You could stay facing that way, Ruth, if you want. I don't think it matters. And then take a big to medium step back with your left foot. Crescent lunge here, either back heel up or shorten the stance quite a bit, back heel down. Front knee bent, hips square to the front. Lengthen the tailbone down towards the earth. For a lot of us, we have to bend that back knee to get the tailbone down because our deep hip flexors are so tight. All the hip flexors can be tight. Top of the head reaches up here. Right hand stays on the hip, left arm reaches up. And lengthen through that whole left side without bending towards the right. Keep the tailbone lengthening down. Breathe. We'll bring that hand back down to the hip. Remember that sensation of stretch on the front of the left hip and thigh, and then hinge forward from the hips. We're no longer stretching the hip flexors. You might be able to bend or straighten the back knee rather. Firm the belly, tuck the chin, reach the hands towards the back foot, and then we sweep our arms out to the sides and forward here in that arrow pose, and we exhale, sweep out and back. Do 2 or 3 more of those. Next time your arms come forward, lift the torso, the arms up, and step it to the front. Let the arms go, roll the shoulders, shake out the ankles. So we're going to come into a standing quad stretch, and I would encourage you to come to the wall for this one because we don't have a great option for like the toe down. So if you start to lose your balance, I'd like you to be near a wall or a steady piece of furniture. You might need the strap for this, but I wouldn't worry about it if you feel like you can get that foot behind you. So standing on the foot closest to the wall, lift and spread those toes, place them down, spread out, and then pull the other foot behind you, reaching back to find it with your hand, the strap, or maybe hold the hem of your pants here. And then think about lengthening your kneecap towards the earth and the top of the head towards the sky. And you're going to start to not only get your quadriceps muscles here in the front of the thigh, but some of your hip flexors. One of those hip flexors is also a quadriceps muscle, so it crosses over both the knee and the hip joint. Breathe. If you want to try taking that hand away from the wall or have it hovering, you can. So you work on the balance at the same time you stretch. Take a couple more breaths here. And then we'll let that foot go. Take it out, reset, see how it feels different from the other side. We'll turn around if you're at the wall or that piece of furniture. And the foot closest to the support comes forward, toes spread. Bring the other foot up towards your butt, finding it with your hand or use a strap or hold the hem of your pants. And if the knee goes out to the side or goes forward, you're losing out on the hip flexor lengthening, the stretching. So think kneecap straight towards the earth, top of the head towards the sky. Breathe. Focusing the gaze on a non-moving spot straight ahead. If you want to try adding the balance piece to this, which would be hand hovering or maybe 1 or 2 fingertips on the wall or hand totally away from it. And letting that go, coming out of it, shake out your legs, roll the shoulders. And we're going to come down to sitting on the mat. And I'm going to have you sit, Ruth, sit so your profile is to them. And we'll start, let's have your legs straight out in front. You might want a little bit of elevation where we're going to be doing a little forward and backward pelvic tilting here from this position. So legs out straight. And if you're tight through your hamstrings, your back might be in a little bit of a rounded or a C-shaped position, and you might need your hands for support. So hands could come beside you up on fingertips. If you need the blocks under your hands, feel free to grab that part. So we're going to do the easy part first. So I want you to let your back round. So the pelvis tips backward, the lower back rounds. You could drop your chin. And then we're going to do the opposite. So we're tipping those your hip bones forward, lifting the chest. Yeah. And then let the back round. Pelvis tips backwards, we drop the chin. And then on your inhale, we push those pelvic bones forward, lift the chest. And do that a few more times. And it might be really subtle, especially that tipping the pelvis forward part, because we're coming up against resistance here, hamstrings, backs of the legs. One more. And one reason I'm having you do this is sort of the rolling over the hips that happens when we're coming out of the finish. So we're going to do something similar, but from a seated position here. You're either sitting on your shins or sitting on two yoga blocks underneath your sitting bones, which Ruth is going to demonstrate here. Or another option, which I will demonstrate, is from sitting on a chair. So Ruth is putting the two yoga blocks between her ankles, and then her sitting bones are on there. For some of you, this will not work with your feet. It won't work with your knees or your quads. So you might be like me, where you're sitting perched on the front edge of a seat. And we want to find that backward and forward pelvic tilt here again. So hands on the thighs, and we're going to let the tailbone tuck under, the pelvis rocks back, rounding through the back, drop the chin. And then we're tipping this pelvis forward, tailbone pushes back, chest up. Do that a few more times. So exhale, let the back round, the tailbone tucks under, and then we inhale, push the tailbone back, lifting the chest up. Good. So we are using abdominal muscles, spinal muscles, but also the hip flexors are tipping that pelvis forward. So I want you to come into not the lifted chest, but just a very upright position here. And we'll bring our hands to the hips. So now we're not doing that rounding and arching of the back or the tipping of the pelvis. We're going to keep the spine long, so reach the head up. And we're starting to lean back from the hips. Don't let the back arch. You won't go very far. And then exhale, rise back up to upright. We'll do that again. Inhale, leaning back just a little bit. Spine stays long. And then exhale, lift yourself to upright. We'll do a few more here. So what I'd like you to notice is your abdominal muscles having to work to control the descent of you going backward and to pull you forward. And maybe even put your fingers on some of those hip flexors. Notice how they jump underneath your fingers here, these ones here on the top of the thighs, to control you going back. So this is you coming into the finish as you lean back, and then you rolling over your hips, rolling over your pelvis to come forward as you move towards the catch, right? So it's a combination of the abdominal muscles and the hip flexors here working. All right, let's take a little break. You could come forward to hands and knees and maybe do a few cat-cows or circle the hips. That was the extent of my demonstration for today. All right. And then I'm going to have you make your way onto your back. And we are come into a bridge pose. And bridge pose we think about as being a strengthening pose. But It's also a hip flexor opening pose. We lengthen, we stretch through the hip flexors here. So line your heels up with the sitting bones, arms by the sides. You're lifting your hips and back up off the floor. Once you're all the way up, I'd like you to tuck your shoulders in closer to your spine. Press the pinky sides of your arms into the floor or hands underneath, interlacing fingers, arms pressing into the floor, or grip the sides of the yoga mat like Ruth is doing. And then take a few breaths. So here you're going for straight line from the knee to the shoulders, or maybe even an arcing line here. So we open the hip flexors while we strengthen the back of the body. Then take those arms out from underneath you, coming down onto your back. Maybe bring the feet out a little wider. Do that wide-footed windshield wipers here. And then we're coming into a supported bridge. So you could either use your yoga block, it could be a folded blanket or a combination of those, a bolster, a foam roller, but you're lifting the hips and sliding whatever prop you have underneath your sacrum. That's the sort of bony part below the low back, but above the fleshy part of your buttocks. And I would suggest if you're using the yoga block, you're going to have the lowest elevation of yoga block underneath you for this, especially if you know your hip flexors are tight or if you have some tenderness in your sacroiliac joints or low back. So keep one knee bent and foot flat and straighten the other leg out. So we're opening and lengthening through hip flexors. We did something very similar at the beginning to this. Pause here. What do you feel on the front of the hip and thigh of that straightened leg? Are you feeling some stretch? Does it feel open? Do you feel pinch in your lower back? If you feel pinch in your lower back or you don't feel much stretch on the front of the hip and thigh, pull the other knee in towards you. Hold on to hugging that. Yeah, you're right one, Ruth. Pulling that knee in. And bring it out a little wider than the hip. If you were feeling some pinch in your lower back, hopefully this helps. If you're still not feeling much stretch on the hip flexors of that straightened leg, do that little leg lengthener move we did at the beginning where you push out through the heel and then relax it. Do a few more of those leg lengtheners. So it just kind of, for me, when I do this one, it almost feels like I'm lengthening from my belly to my heel, where those deep hip flexors go in and attach to the front of the spine. All right, we'll release this, switching sides. And it could be that you just leave one knee bent, foot flat as you straighten the other leg out. Maybe this is enough stretch and opening on that straightened leg side, those hip flexors, or you pull the bent knee in towards you. And this can decrease some kind of pinchiness, crunchiness in the lower back because it starts to tip the pelvis back and flatten the lower back, opening those joints. This might be enough hip flexor release stretch on that right side or the straightened leg side, or you add that little leg lengthener. Inhale, pushing out through the heel. Exhale, let it go. If you're really tight in the hip flexors, the straightened leg, air quotes, might be a little bent at the knee. And that usually means your quads are tight. All right, we're going to let both feet come down to the floor. And then find your strap. Yeah. We're coming into a legs up position here, but I want you to use your strap under your feet. So pull the knees in towards you and then bring the middle of the strap under the soles of both feet here. So you're going to use the strap to hold your legs in the up position. And if you're tight in the hamstrings, you might need to bend your knees a little bit and pull the legs towards you a little bit more. If your strap is long enough, let the hands slide down the strap so the elbows are resting on the ground. Your grip is working, but you're not having to strain through the shoulders and the neck. This position here, if you can kind of find this sweet spot where your legs don't have to work and the strap is kind of pulling straight down towards the earth, this helps to settle the ball of the hip joint into the back of the socket of the hip joint, which can be helpful if you have some hip impingement, if you feel that pinchy on the front of the hip, especially when we do ankle over knee stretches. So it's a little bit of a gentle mobilization to bring the ball towards the back of the socket of the hip joints here. And I'm not exactly sure why, but in my body it feels like very grounding, like things are settling and my body's held together with more than just the tension I hold in my muscles. When you're ready, we'll release this here. So bring the feet down, the strap off to the side. And I want to make sure I've left time to do some of the self-massage with the small ball, because this might be something that you've never done before, that when I do it, I find it to be really helpful in releasing tension in my hip flexors. We're going to be working primarily on the deep hip flexors. So find your small ball, tennis ball. Ruth is using a high bounce pinky ball, which is actually a toy, but it's one of our favorite self-massage tools. So she is showing you where you would place that ball. So remember at the beginning, we found those front hip bones and go in just like 1 or 2 finger widths to the inside of that front hip bone. And then we're going to lie face down with the ball in that position. If you have a hard ball like a lacrosse ball, this could get kind of intense and you may need to roll away from it. If you're really tight, it could get intense and you may have to roll away from it to decrease the pressure. So make sure it's not too far close to the center, because then you're massaging your large intestine, which is not ideal. So once you're there, you might kind of wiggle a little side to side. Breathe. You might just hold it there and breathe. Another option here is to keep that ball in place, and you're going to bend the knee and straighten it. Bend and straighten a few times. And notice what you feel here. Is it just pressure? Is it sore? Are you thinking, boy, I got it right in the right place? Did you lose your breath? And then try keeping the knee bent. Yeah, and rock that lower leg side to side. Yeah, so bending and straighten the knee kind of is a pin and stretch technique where you pin the muscle in position and then you stretch and release here. We're doing a kind of cross friction massage, or removing the muscle actually laterally left and right over that ball. All right, let the foot come down and let's switch to the other side. So remember, you're finding that front hip bone, placing that ball just to the inside of that bone. One of the main rules when you're doing self-massage is to stay off the bony prominences. You won't injure yourself, but you might bruise yourself, and it's not therapeutic. So once you find that good position for the ball here, you might do just a little kind of hip side to side movement. See if it feels like it's in the right place. Sometimes I have to raise the ball higher or lower to get it in the right place. Just reposition it. Make sure you haven't lost your breath. Sometimes with deep massage, we tend to hold the breath here, so keep the breathing. That will actually remind your nervous system that you can relax and the muscles can relax. And then try bending and straightening that knee. And you'll notice that Ruth is going slow so that she can tolerate it. Yep. So she can tolerate it, so she can breathe through it. So she's not rushing through the sensation. And then keep the knee bent and rock that lower leg side to side. And it's not a big movement. When I feel tension in my hip flexors building up, I'll do 2 to 3 minutes on each side once a day. All right, taking that ball out from underneath you. Decide if there's any stretch you'd like to do, hip stretch, a twist you'd like to do before moving into Shavasana. Maybe it's a child's pose to actually come into that hip flexor relaxation. And then eventually finding your way into the pose you want to be in for Shavasana. And I'm going to have Ruth to come back into the hip flexor relaxation position, the legs up on the couch, the chair, ottoman. She's using the two yoga bolsters to represent a piece of furniture here. To cover up with a blanket if you want. Sometimes having a folded blanket on my front hips or the low belly feels or allows me to kind of rest and relax a little bit more, but it's up to you. Settling in, adjusting so that you're more comfortable. Take an inhale through the nose. Open the mouth, sigh out the breath. Maybe one more breath like that. Let it go. Allow the body to rest. Allow the breath to come in whatever rhythm and frequency your body dictates for the next few minutes. Begin to deepen your breath. Invite some gentle movements like wiggling the toes and fingers, turning the head. Bigger movements at the wrists and ankles, shoulders, knees, hips. If a good morning stretch would feel good, you could bring the arms overhead and inhale, lengthen through the body. Exhale, let it go. Bend the knees, roll to your side, pause for a moment here. Appreciating your body, your breath, your health, your yoga practice. And gentle press up to a seated position. Thank you all for being here, sharing your practice, your energy. May you all feel safe. May you be free from suffering. May you feel loved. May all beings everywhere feel safe. May we all be free from suffering. May we all feel loved. Thank you. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, everybody at home.
Thanks, Laura. Great class.
Thank you.